when Alice
Yeah,
finishes.
yeah, 15.
That's tough if like external people are coming in though too, for what a set time for presenters to come.
Oh,
It is, but we have the same issue, we have the same challenge with
Sunny.
board meetings, when somebody's is waiting for them to give presentations, so they're watching the live stream.
And you're a bad guy, you have to give a window from 10 to 12 to be
8 to 4.
Are we officially starting?
Well, Brady was coming. Shall we
Oh,
just
yeah.
go ahead and start? Okay, I'm going to call the County Board Committee of the Whole session together. This is our first time to have it at 10:30 on Tuesday morning right after Public Health and Human Services. We, in the future, will have it 15 minutes after their presentation, but for the first time, we did say at 10:30 for our first meeting. This is different for the public to be able to see us talk about a variety of topics, and also for them to come to the meeting. I know because it's a different time, it may not be convenient, but here we are being recorded, and so you can watch us anytime, and that will give you some ideas about how we are trying to have an open agenda and encourage folks to come in the future. We do pick a topic, and today our topic will be facilitated by Valerie Marusco, and she will be doing a topic on public engagement and communication strategies for 2019. And so I will turn it over to Valerie to begin our presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity, Commissioners, to be here today on behalf of the Office of Public Information as well as the Communications Committee. And thank you for the opportunity to participate in the working session, Committee of the Whole. This is a great time to have a discussion together and hash out some solutions. Topic today is exploration of more public engagement and input opportunities. I'm just going to pass around the agendas. I don't think those got passed out. So, you know, Cook County is continually striving to deliver quality public services, effectively communicate with and engage citizens in meaningful ways. As we know, it is a priority of the board to be responsive to the public and does value citizen input. And although Cook County does have more communication mechanisms than ever, and we're making public meetings accessible to all through streaming and archiving, and that's something that not many counties do. This is above and beyond, and it's a way to reach out and engage more people, whether you know, they watch it live streamed or they watch it later on. It is making meetings accessible to all. So we're pleased that Committee of the Whole can now be part of that process. We also know the community has asked for more direct two-way conversations with the Board of Commissioners and to get more answers and feedback from the board. You know, there's been some frustration vocalized from both ends. You know, commissioners feeling like they can't answer and are leaving citizens without that input, and citizens asking for that. So that's really why we're here today. You know, we've heard that some citizens feel they're not being heard. And as we begin the new year and we have some new commissioners, this is a prime opportunity to explore the issue together, identify solutions, set some attainable goals, and move forward together so that, you know, we're continually improving those processes and engaging our community in our local county government. So, we need to define the issue before we can identify appropriate solutions. To support the board in this goal, the Communications Committee has been discussing a variety of tools that can be implemented should the board choose. However, it's important to have that conversation together and define the board's understanding of the issue of communities' concerns before we can put that roadmap together. We don't want to just say, okay, here's what you should do. This needs to be an inclusive process, both with the board, the Communications Committee that's going to support the delivery of any of these actions, and then give some community input as well. So to kind of start that conversation, put together some sheets. This actually just serendipitously happened to be in here, a reminder of the board's, or the county's mission, supporting community through quality public service, and then our values that were agreed upon, and we still need to decide on the vision, the direction of where the county is going. So this is a good segue to get back into that visioning exercise. It's not what we're intending to accomplish today, but it is a good reminder of our values: integrity, accountability, equity, collaboration, and respect. And those are all going to feed into the solutions that we come up with and make sure that, you know, the delivery options we're deciding on are in line with the values and the mission. So, as I said, before we can really define what the appropriate solutions are, we need to define the issue. You know, what are you hearing in the community? When you're thinking of communication and public engagement, hearing from citizens, what are you hearing?
An inability to have a conversation with the entire board.
Inability to have a conversation with the board. Anything else?
It's uncomfortable when they come speak to us.
Uncomfortable process?
Yeah, they don't know what they're supposed to do when they come here or how they approach us when they come here. We have them sign in on a piece of paper and then tell us their name.
Okay. So uncomfortable process coming in front of the board, don't know proper protocols or the expectations, is that what I'm hearing? Okay. Forgive my handwriting, that
It's all right.
is not an area.
Hard to write in an angle.
Yeah. Further to your point, Heidi, that's something that I've heard as well. There's leaving with a sense of being unsatisfied, that they've, you know, taken the time to come and talk to the board and voice a concern or ask for information, that feedback mechanism is not built into our normal board meeting process or public comment period. Is that consistent with what others are hearing? Okay. So leaving unsatisfied, expectations. Anything else anybody's hearing?
I think when they're coming here and asking us the questions, then they're reading one of the local newspapers or the Facebook or listening to the thing there, and they're only kind of taking what they want to hear out of it. You know, I know you read the newspaper sometimes on some votes that we had, and
It's wrong.
all the votes are right, but it says what the vote was against, but then it doesn't finish the whole thing, you know? I think it was when I voted no on the art thing, Commissioner DeJean votes no on art. You know, let's put the rest of my comment on there.
But, you know, kind of along on that, that's kind of not their stressor, but people come in and they've got stuff with them and they're talking to us and none of us can see what they have in front of them. So we don't have the resource. And if they only have 5 minutes, they don't always finish. And so I know Commissioner Storley has asked, please leave that with us so we can respond or read it or look at it. And so I don't know if that's somehow how we incorporate into this, and it happens even more at Truth in Taxation because they come up and say, my taxes went up 200%. We don't know that. We don't know what that means. We don't know where they started or where they went or where in that line the change happened. And so that makes it difficult if we're going to communicate with people or speak back to them. We have to have the same data they're working from.
Yeah.
So some way for them to know when they come here that we also need a copy of that.
So perhaps as part of the process that they have to provide a copy of their materials for the board, because what I'm hearing you say is it's hard to get back to a person or address a concern if you don't have the actual information.
Right.
complete thought that they're.
They
working
get
from.
their statement, and that's not on the county website until after we approve the levy, so we don't know from their statement what they're reading.
Copies of materials to board speakers. And I don't want to lose, Bobby, the vein that you're going down to, because I think there's two separate issues here. To board, and that it's important for follow-up. Back to the previous point, is it inaccurate or relying on certain sources of information or inaccurate information fueling?
I think that well, we as a board, we're only, that's, I think Jeff might have brought this up before, the video camera made the media lazy.
Don't think that's what was said. Well,
No,
I can
it-
tell you from being here for 6 years, we used to have 1 or 2 people from the paper and WTIP, and I know that a vote from us was put in the paper, and my vote was reported incorrectly, and when I reached out to the paper, their response was, "That's not what I heard." And I was like, how do I respond to that? I mean, so yeah, that's definitely a concern, how they hear it.
If you can see how many people are at our meetings here, and our regular meetings aren't much, we have the 2 usual people here, but other than that, everybody's depending off the video footage to watch the meeting.
Get the report. What I've tried to do is, when someone comes forward with an issue for 5 minutes, I follow up with them personally because they were in my district. So I find that that's helpful. And we have opened it up at the end of our meeting for, Suzie Q had this interest or concern, and we would discuss it a little bit. So, but there again, Suzie Q needs to know that we discussed it, and we'll either get back to them or talk about it in the future. So I think there's a responsibility on the public too, to either talk to us in our particular districts or follow up with our website, follow up with, yes, some in the paper and on WTIP, but it's the whole picture. It isn't just an isolated part of communication. Yeah.
And is following up with the individual, is that a consistent practice across each commissioner, or is there, do we have that as part of the procedure or protocol? And would that be helpful if that was?
Yeah, because if I get an email, I answer. If I get a phone call, I answer. But I have people from my district come in here, and I don't reach out and call them. I don't have their contact information to get a hold of them. And I, had a citizen from my district in here, and they actually came in during our break, and it was Jan's retirement. And I said, "Oh, are you here for Jan's retirement?" And they said, "No." And they sat down and had cake, and, I'm trying to engage a conversation. And then they came up and spoke to public comment and left. And I was like, you had a half an hour to sit and talk, and you didn't. So I don't know. I feel like they don't want to talk to me. They want to talk to all of us.
So I'm hearing that across a couple of the points, that we need a consistent mechanism to capture the concern, where they're from, and then define whose responsibility it is
To answer.
to answer them, and make sure that that process is being consistently followed. Okay?
I think it might be helpful to repeatedly drive home some kind of strategy for the public for options to communicate with the board. I think a lot of times it's just assumed, I have an issue, I'm going to go to the board meeting and speak to the board. Well, that's maybe not the most effective way to communicate with the board. It certainly is their right, but if you're looking for answers, then there might be a better way to go about finding them. And so that's, we kind of have to advertise you know,
Yeah.
the best way.
And to your point, not everybody is comfortable with a single
Right.
avenue. So
Sure.
That's
Yep.
why we try and have a multi-channel communication, multi-channel communication strategy to deliver information. But we also need to let people know, exactly as you said, what the options are for them to communicate with us. There may be this expectation that you can only talk to the board through public comment, but that may not be within their comfort level. We're going to get into this point and a little bit further into the discussion, but I've also heard from people that there is a sense of bullying in the community, and they wouldn't feel comfortable coming to voice their opinion, even though it may be supportive, or they may have really good points about a current community issue, but there is this concern that there'll be pushback, and that there's not that open support mechanism to come and speak to the board. So maybe another avenue, like you're saying, Dave, would be of benefit. It's not just the only option to come to public comment. There's other ways to submit and receive information. Okay, these are really good. Hey, welcome. Thanks. No worries. We're working through, we're starting a discussion about public information, public engagement, community engagement, and defining some of what the issues and challenges are and how we can fix that. Great. So the board's getting their understanding of what they're hearing in the community and some of the concerns, so we can map out a strategy to help improve that. Great, good.
One of the things I think we take in consideration too, that people, families are really busy. And so they mentioned it this morning at the Public Health Board that they use email to reach out and let people know about what's going on. And I'm wondering if that would work for some of us who would like to get a group of folks who would appreciate an email blast from us. And this would be if we have topics that we feel we want to have public input from them, besides having a meeting, but letting them know that there's going to be an opportunity for public input. So, and that would, of course, be their privilege to accept that or not as far as an email blast. But I do think with everybody so busy and they don't keep track of specific things, that might be another way to communicate.
Yeah, generational communication styles vary greatly. Certain generations, it's not true. It's, you can't cut every person in a generation the same cookie cutter, but some people these days prefer information delivery in one way or the other and won't engage in more of the traditional mechanisms, or don't have time, as you said, to come during workday or just because they have so many things going on. So I'm hearing people are busier than ever, perhaps email or online information delivery as well as input opportunities. So if we're looking for citizen input on something, potentially exploring options to deliver information or solicit input electronically.
And we have a county Facebook too.
Yep.
So that could be another
Yes.
way.
Yeah, both the county and the Sheriff's Office and Public Safety page are very active. We've seen even just a couple weeks ago, December 27th, with the large snow dump. I produced a very quick, less than 60-second spot about clearing fire numbers and how that makes a big difference for emergency responders. If you can't see the address, that delays response time, and that's important for life-saving. Point of that is we saw that 60-second post go straight across the country over, I think it's up to 60,000 views now, and it was shared over 800 and something times by different emergency services departments. So we do see that people are connecting in that way and are sharing it and engaging in that information. And that was free to produce and
Sure.
with our own imagery. Okay.
I liked the wipe the snow off your car post.
Yeah. There has been some tragic incidents where ice is smashing through people's windshields, and causing a chain reaction on roads and, yeah.
Yes, I think at some point in time, maybe we'll get to it, but to follow up with Commissioner Mills' statement about consistently remind constituents, their avenues or methods for communicating. And I think it'd be good for us to brainstorm what those are, and so that I think that's something very concrete. With that, I think we can't emphasize enough that, we as commissioners can be contacted most easily by email. And that's sort of a constituent and if they're in your district, you should respond to them, and I try to. And emphasize that as well, that it's not just the county. We are elected officials representing these people, and that they should feel comfortable to contact us. And if they have frustration with that, then it would be good to have, okay, what do you do then?
Some additional mechanisms, but maybe starting with that commitment as commissioners to have that follow-up. Would a standard procedure written into board meetings or our public engagement process be welcome?
How
We
would
should talk about it.
yeah, how would we use that?
It could be, and again, this is part of, you're right, we're gonna that's the next step of identifying what we do already have and what are some other additional mechanisms that we could agree on. So maybe
Okay.
before we go there, is there any
Sure.
other understanding of current issues or what the feeling is in the community, or the board's feeling as well? What would you like to do, or how do you feel about our current communication tools and practices and procedures and public engagement mechanisms?
When I started, the public, when they asked a question, we answered them. So that's where my frustration is, just because I remember the old days.
And I think I hear that probably most often is, so it does take time and effort and a little bit of courage to come before a board, and then not to get any response is just,
However,
Extremely
Molly
frustrating.
did address that.
oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
But that's
Yeah.
the disconnect
That's-
between a good procedure for
Right,
Right.
talking to the board. Like,
yeah.
that's what I would do or would have done is
And during
if I
the
want a
meeting-
question answered,
Yeah, during the meeting, people could ask questions, and it wasn't disruptive. I mean,
So it was more two-way,
Mhm.
yes, and you're
Yeah,
feeling like it moved away from that responsive?
completely.
Okay.
And I do see the legal advice regarding that. And I think it is important to have a policy in place to be fair and equitable and legally covered. But I feel like our community is small enough that we should have some flexibility or an ability to be able to
If
answer
they submit
things.
questions in advance,
Sure.
then legally,
Sure.
I think that's what the school does. I'm not sure, I haven't been to a meeting in a long time, but I think if you were to speak at public comment, you put your question in advance so the board is prepared to answer.
They do that in some counties. So you call the office and you state your name and what you would like to bring up. So then that, we're already prepared for that. I don't know if that would,
In a previous jurisdiction I worked in, that was part of a process. There was a deputation registration process. So if you intend on making a deputation to the council or the board, you would need to register and provide the information that you would be bringing, real brief summary of the concern or the topic, and any supporting documentation that's required. So, yeah, so that you can do whatever diligence before the meeting to have, an effective conversation. Yeah, so that's an
It's just-
option.
If I could just pursue that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're proposing is that you would like to see us spend part of our regular school board meetings,
board meeting.
I mean
Yeah.
board meetings, county, there we go, schools. Part of that and having dialogue without a time limit, or?
We're not proposing anything at this time, we're
Okay, all right.
brainstorming.
I just want to clarify that, yeah,
Just
okay.
bringing up the option of, are there ways to
Do it
accomplish
at a
that?
regular board meeting.
Yep.
That's-
And there, I mean, that'd be up to the board and the actual rules of governance, whether it be a time limit, but perhaps more of a registration process where somebody would need to submit, so you're not feeling blindsided.
And
You
it
have an
keeps,
idea
I
of
mean, we could
topic.
keep it to our 30 minutes, and if 10 people sign up, we say, you know, we say we have time for 5. So we say the limit's met for this meeting, can you attend a future meeting? So then we don't run into the hour-long. We have it set in advance, that we have a certain amount of slots to fill.
I think that would be frustrating, though, for someone to come to a meeting and say, I'm sorry, you can't. We should let them know in advance.
Yeah, there would likely have to be a scheduling process with it, so that, yeah, people aren't wasting their time, and you're not also preparing for issues that may not be on the agenda.
So is it currently the case that an individual would not be put on the agenda?
We haven't tried it this way yet.
If they didn't register, you mean?
In advance?
Yeah.
For example, at the city council, a person could be put on the agenda if you spoke with the mayor and asked to be put on the agenda to talk about whatever topic you wanted to, then you would get a slot. Is that not the case at the county level
I don't
at this
know.
point?
No.
It certainly could be.
I think it's.
But it hasn't been, sure, it hasn't been
No.
a common practice with the county, at the county
Right,
level.
we
There's
just call them.
topics that are on the agenda, but the public comment period is open.
Yes.
Maybe it would be helpful if we reviewed what our current actual public comment period process is.
And kind of how that works, like with our land services and approving planning commission items, people who are on our agenda for the day to be approved come in at public comment because they've been told that's the only time they're allowed to speak to us. And so they make their statement of their approval in the morning, and then they're also, I mean, I see the look on their face. They're just like, okay, no one's going to answer me. I don't know what's going to happen. Do I stay until my time?
Valerie, would it be useful to skip ahead and talk about some of the administrative mechanisms that we brainstormed at communications? Because we discussed opportunities to improve communications and workflow, and maybe that will answer some of the questions.
Absolutely.
And again, these are suggestions from our working committee and may or may not be what you want to do.
Yeah, our communications committee has, much like the board, set their schedule for 2019 and have agreed to meet weekly every Monday morning to review a number of things, current issues, priorities for the week, review media coverage, look at, if there's anything that needs to be corrected, misinformation out there, and how we can get citizens the correct information. So we're meeting every Monday morning. The communications committee consists of myself, the county attorney, the county administrator, our human resources generalist, as well as the public health and human services director, and our MIS director. Between Jeff and myself, we also represent the highway department and the sheriff's office and public safety for the public safety and transportation initiatives, and we work very closely with both of those directors to deliver communications and bring their interest to the communications committee. So that group's meeting every Monday. Some of the tools and the mechanisms for consideration that we have been discussing, commissioner follow-up on questions received during public comment periods. We're hearing that now, that's a want or an idea from this side as well. We could also include any of those comments or whatever, how the information that a particular commissioner has followed up with a constituent could also be included in the board summaries that we deliver. So if a question comes up and you've gone away and come up with the answer and delivered that information back to the person, likely the rest of the community would also like that information, and it could be helpful to include in the board summary and then provide to staff. Because we also find that if staff don't have the correct information, it's hard to, it's uncomfortable for them as well, and they're left wondering. And as a team, it's great to be informed and be able to deliver that to our citizens. One idea, again, has been comment cards. So maybe we have a comment card here available at board meetings. So if a member of the public has a comment and they're not necessarily intending to speak during the public comment period, they can officially submit a question, and we can take the time to research that, get the right information, and deliver that back to the person. Could also have an online form of that as well. Easier to insert a poll or submit a question to the board right on our website or through our social media channels, and make sure that information then is brought back to a board meeting, either through the commissioner concerns section of the agenda, as well as through our other mechanisms like the board summary and through our website. Another idea that has worked in some communities, and I've had the opportunity to be part of the development of a number of these, would be a citizen satisfaction survey through a legitimate organization. I have historically worked with Ipsos Reid. I'm going to share, this is quite thick, so I didn't want to commit or print a ton of these copies, but you can look through that. Citizen satisfaction surveys are a tool for governments to get citizen input, to have it be neutral and fair and third-party delivery, gathering statistically valid data to give us a baseline. And this was a municipal survey for a much larger population, but some of the information that was asked for in there is how do citizens prefer to get information from their county? What is their level of satisfaction with X, Y, and Z service? What do you feel are the priority areas? Quality of life. We would have the opportunity to define those questions and have an organization do that. We could consult with MCIT or Minnesota counties, whatever the appropriate service could be, and we would need to obviously explore price and things like that. But that may give us an idea of where people are, where we need to focus that energy. Is sometimes a very vocal minority can express, concern about an issue, but when the rest of the community is consulted about it, maybe we find out through statistically valid methods that that's not really where we should be focusing our energy on. Or if everybody comes back and says, you need to be doing this, that gives us some direction, and that also supports having data like that as a baseline, as well as a vision when we work through the vision process and agreeing, as a community, this is where we're going, and here's the data that supports where we need to be focusing that energy. Sometimes that can help. I can circulate a link to a number of these. It's done every other year in that community, and that's something that the city had committed to doing every other year, and it gives you a baseline and sees a trend if you're improving or if things are declining, and where to focus that energy. So citizen satisfaction survey is one option. You can go full board like that, or we could look at doing an online survey locally through the county as well.
They have the same issues as us.
Yeah, many communities are facing the same issues, and that's the City of Thunder Bay Citizen Satisfaction Survey. It's online /citizen survey. All of the previous years are available if anybody wanted to check that out. A regular county column in the newspaper, and this is something I've spoken to Cook County News Herald about. They are willing to provide the county with a regular column. We've seen, the paper runs regular columns for a variety of issues, conservation officers, the school, former commissioners.
Is there a fee for that?
No, we'd be submitting editorial content. And so the communications committee has been working to develop a schedule. If we did that weekly, there are a number of standing committees, and the Public Health and Human Services Board that could do one per month that aligns with the summary of their meetings. That's another way of getting information out to the community. So general board and county priorities and initiatives could be one of the weeks. Public Health and Human Services, Public Safety and Transportation, and then another general issues or service highlights for all of our departments.
And some of those articles might be from the administrator's office, some of them might be from the commissioners, they might be general things, they may come from standing committees. So we may, if we pursue this idea, we may recruit some of you to contribute.
Then who approves it?
Who approves it?
Yeah.
Ultimately, the program would be approved by the board, but the content would be reviewed and edited and helped by the communications committee. So primarily Valerie and April administratively overseeing that. So working, the program would be set by the Board of Commissioners. What's the agenda? Is this a monthly column from Health and Human Services along the lines of a board summary make sense? Okay. What else makes sense? So we'll be getting a schedule out, and we've got a couple of preliminary ideas ready to go. But if, again, we're just talking about administrative options that we've been discussing on how we can address the primary issues that we've been aware of.
And again, trying to make it multi-channel, so we're still using traditional media where we feel like there may be a gap in one, information coming from the county directly. Online tools as well.
Well, I'd like to comment. I think that's just great. I know where I've worked before with the schools, especially, that in other organizations, just to have a weekly column in the newspaper is so proactive, and we have a message there that's not an opinion. It's based upon our decisions and/or things that we've worked through. And I think that's very proactive and maybe eliminating some of the misunderstandings that we have with the public.
It would help, it would help cover the transparency of different areas. I think one part of that, transparency part, would cover that too. I mean, it would be small, but it could be big.
I'll write out this list after, so it's visible, and we can make this information available as well. But broadening to your point of availability of information and transparency, we've talked about broadening the public data section of the website. We often get public data requests, and those are followed up on. They're answered. However, if one person is asking for that information, chances are other members of the public would like to see that as well. We did provide, we knew that there was a data request for salary information. So knowing that a member of the community is interested in that, we should make that available to everybody, and so that it's not taken out of context or focused on in a specific way. So we've talked about posting any of the public data requests that are not subject to confidentiality if they're under court investigation or protected by confidentiality. Certainly can't post those, but if there is a public data request made where information is provided, make that available to anybody who'd like to see it in the public data section of our website. So it would just be documents, topic, and the supporting information, and if anybody would like to go there and find that, have that available.
Would there be question and answer under that document? Because that data was taken out of context and was confusing, and then going to the county website and seeing our data, it was hard to align our data with what was printed and how to understand it. And so I spent like 45 minutes with a citizen walking them through the whole, where I'm sure they're not the only one that had those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that gets tricky, and maybe we're not ready for that yet, but when you say if one person's asking for data, other people might be interested, and not everyone understands our data.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple of items in there. One is One of the reasons why the Communications Committee is going to meet weekly is so that we can review and submit any corrections from any local media outlets as needed as they come up going forward, so that we can address those issues. Two, in related specifically to this question, what we came out with was a press release that identified the issue, the data, and how the data can really be interpreted, and whether or not we turn on public comments, like a social media feed to that or not, is a secondary question, but a response to the public questions about the data, I think, is appropriate, and we can do.
I'm kind of scared about having public comment turned on and where that can go, because.
I don't know that we were looking
I
at
don't-
public comment about
I don't.
data requests, but
yeah.
just making the information available.
Available, yeah.
So, I mean, the rest of the community is aware of what's being requested.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
know, not identifying the requester, but, you know, a citizen
No.
has requested this data, it was provided, and here it is. I think,
And the citizen I talked to didn't understand how it was printed in the paper, and they didn't understand how we had it on the website and how to make sense of it.
I think that largely depends on the intent of the requester as well.
Yeah.
I think there's separate issues. But in the interest of making that data available, this is one way that we could easily do that, make the
Yep.
the request available and accessible.
And maybe it's just, if you have questions about this request, the department to
Contact.
contact. Yeah,
Mhm.
that would be easy.
Yeah.
So in all of our conversations at the communications level, our goal at the beginning and the end of each meeting is, how do we administratively support you as commissioners in serving the public? So understand that if you have a question, let us know. If you want us to take this down a different road, or you want to select from any of the things that we've offered, or suggest something that we haven't come up with, that's our goal, is simply to help you as commissioners and as a board best serve the public. So a lot of ideas here, a lot of thoughts. You can see that we're ready to make a commitment of time and resources and improve our ability to engage and communicate with the public in 2019, and that's, aside from the projects that we have going on, that's our goal for this year.
No, and I think there's been a momentum over the last couple of years. We're doing more than ever. But we know that there's still an opportunity to improve that. So to reiterate Jeff's point, we're here to support you in your role to do that, and however we can support that with the tools that we have that are realistic and attainable. I mean, we could create a laundry list of all kinds of things, but we need to select some good, easily feasible tools.
That happened when we
Implement that
hired
sooner or
you.
later.
Sorry, but I had a Facebook page and a newsletter, and after every single meeting, I sent out the newsletter via email for people that want it that way. Then I reprinted that email on my Facebook page that was for commissioners, and it was a lot of work. And so when we hired you, all of that got shut down. Because we needed to have one source of information. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, you know. I mean, we everybody, I think, as a community, both from the board and the public, intentions are usually really good, and everybody is exhibiting an attitude that, you know, we want more and to engage. And so this is a good thing to harness that energy and make some decisions together, to make it less frustrating for everybody, and to move forward towards where we want to go as a county.
I have a question. It's somewhat related. You know, we get your information bulletins by email.
The staff newsletter?
Yeah, as well as just announcements like the commissioner review of the commissioner board meeting and so forth. I was in a committee meeting yesterday, and a question came up, who does that go to? When you
Yeah.
send it out on email, is that all our staff? Has it got certain, or is it, if you could just help me,
Sure.
because I thought maybe all staff got it.
The board summaries?
Yeah, or anything that you come out,
Yeah, we can
like,
kind of review the tools that we have and what the
yeah.
procedure, the protocols are.
And then
for each of those.
who does it affect? And
Yeah, so we have, as a county last year, we started delivering board summaries.
Right.
So the process with that is it gets approved, it gets reviewed, gets approved, and then it goes to the commissioners as a reference tool, as well as the MAT team. So all of the
Okay.
department heads receive it before it goes out. When it does go out publicly, it gets posted to our website, a link on our social media channels, our Facebook pages, to where it lives on the website. As well, it gets circulated to media. So that's local media, regional, because, our TV market is in Duluth. There's other media in the region that do follow issues, or they may see what we're doing in Cook County, and they may have a subsequent issue. So our media list goes locally, regionally, statewide, as well as to the Associated Press.
so for the regular public, they would find that online on our county website?
Yep, it always gets published in the same
Yep,
consistent fashion. So anything we
good.
put out goes through the internal process with the MAT team as well as to commissioners, and then any staff that may be named in there or that.
And I don't think everyone knows that, and so I think that would be part of this,
Yeah, where does our
outreach.
information go?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
how do you find it? And, yeah, good. It would
Yeah.
fit under our previous discussion.
Yeah, when we adopted the communication policy in April of 2017, when this role got formalized, that was formalized in the communication policy that we have a consistent delivery of all of these products. So, not just one media outlet is receiving information, that it's available and accessible to all. So whatever we put out to media, citizens can see that in an unedited way. That this, it's just factual information. It's not we're not putting out an opinion. It's
Sure.
it's a record of.
I think it's great, and I think we just need to get that information out more to the general public.
Yeah, and so they're either delivered to commissioners as a reference tool, so that if somebody asks a question, and you're doing 100 other things, you have a real brief, some people are not that brief, but it's, rather than sitting through, 2 hours of video footage, you have a summary of what the issue and the key messages, key points are, and then the media has the same, and public has access to those through our website every time.
Good.
For the, we have an internal newsletter called What's Cooking. That's our staff e-news, goes out weekly, usually on Thursdays, unless there's some kind of conflict that it has to go on a Friday. But that's delivered to all staff. And a lot of the information that's in the board summary, if it was a topic of concern, that is delivered in a staff focus, with the staff focus on it internally. And then media releases, same process. Anytime I produce a media release, it goes first to commissioners, the MAT team, dispatch if it's a public safety. So if somebody calls in and has a concern, or if it's related to a public safety or emergency issue, they have that release as a reference to. That's the information we give to the public. It's posted to our website, it's posted to our social media channels, and it's delivered to media then as the last step.
Yeah, whenever I get those, I go make sure it's on social media before. I just assume we're the review, and then the final is when it goes live. And then I share it.
Typically, when we're developing messaging like that or reporting things like that, it goes to the people who are directly affected, it goes to the people who are working to make sure that the message is right, and then it goes to the commissioners and the MAT team as one final approval, and a little bit of a delay before it goes out. So, to the extent that you have the ability to respond to those things, or you have the ability to comment on that, and that's intended and that's built into the process. But it's a short window, because timeliness of the delivery of this information is important too. And especially the board summary is really just intended to be a social media type version of the minutes that's available to summarize, it's a recording of the business of the transaction of the board during the previous meeting. So it's not an opinion, it's not an editorial, it really is just a documentation of the conversation that happened.
Yeah, it's highlights of the meeting. But at the end it points to where full agenda meeting minutes and materials are available. So it's a quick way for people to look through and say, do I care about this? Does this apply to me? And then if they are, you know, if they have a vested interest in it, then where to go to get the official documentation.
Well, I especially appreciate it. I do and have the privilege of going to 3 township meetings, and so I kind of highlight, these are the important things I want to report on, but then also to encourage them to see the rest of it, or look upon that as, like you say, a condensing of the minutes. So I appreciate that, and
Just to expand on that, when there is a priority topic or a topic that has a lot more information involved, we will do a standalone release on it. Last week, for example, the meeting schedule and the purpose of committee of the whole versus the board meeting, as well as the intent to explore more public information, was also distributed in a standalone separate release, because that's important. So whenever we have topics like that that are big and, you know, deserve dedicated content, we'll always do that. And sometimes it will say in the board summary, you know, see additional release. Sometimes there's 2 if there's a topic that is pretty involved. Other communication tools, we do have our social media channels. Like I said, they're pretty widely used and shared and followed. I think we have combined with all of our pages, Public Health, Human Services, Sheriff's Office and Public Safety, and the counties general. We're looking at an audience of over 5,000 to 6,000 combined, and then those get shared. So sometimes the visibility of our posts are 91,000. You know, something as simple as the address one, the visibility of it was 91,000 different users, which in comparison to you know, a single copy of one paper and it gets in the recycle bin, sometimes that has a longer shelf life. But again, we need to use that multi-channel communication process to engage readers and citizens in ways that they prefer to get that information.
Public Health this morning said the newspaper has 4,000 subscribers. So if we have 5,000, we're getting a bigger audience, but it's probably a different audience.
Yeah, it can be. You know, and it's usually traditional journalism has regulations that they, you know, have to follow. So it's good to have both perspectives always on issues. Which I think, you know, if we have the regular column, that will help balance some of, you can't just have a single person's voice. And I mean, everybody's own experiences fuel what their message is. So, you know.
Out of this conversation, we'll be bringing back either next Tuesday or the first meeting in February, an idea, a schedule, something about the implementation of, I think, 1 or 2 of these ideas. We can't turn the hydrant on full blast. We have to start somewhere. So I think you'll be seeing from us a summary of this conversation and then a recommendation of actions that you'd like to see us, and then you guys will get to approve how we modify our communications package to address public engagement.
I'm just glad we're trying it, because a lot of these suggestions I've made over the years out of my frustration. So even if one of them goes forward, there's hope in the universe.
Yeah, I mean, we can always try. It's a good thing to be hearing concern and coming up with different options. And some of them may work better than others, but if we have a well-rounded approach to engaging people, that, you know, that's a good thing. And the other, the last one, and this will require a little bit more conversation, is the idea of adding public forums or town hall meetings. Because some people do really enjoy coming to meetings, but the current format, as we're hearing, is not allowing for that two-way, more informal discussion. So public town halls or public forums are one way of doing that. We do have, in addition to board meetings and committee of the wholes, we do have a number of public meetings slated for 2019. I have a list going here. So we have the jail study coming up. There will be a dedicated public information section on that is looking to be scheduled in the very near future. paper here. I will summarize all of these as well, and we can make them available as a supplement to the COW like minutes. We have jail study coming up. We've got the transportation management plan public meeting, and that's with ARDC.
Talk slow.
It's on
You,
here.
you have a copy. It's on the agenda that was handed
Yeah,
out.
the list is on the agenda there.
Okay,
for-
so I'm in a different
for anybody
page.
else involved in this conversation, that would be why. We also annually have an equalization public meeting. And remind me when those take place.
April.
April.
Those are in April. This year we'll also be having County Road 45 design project meetings with the public. We've got likely a public meeting surrounding the potential for an ordinance for short-term rentals. That's been a hot community topic, so short-term rentals. As well as the budget meetings that have been happening August through September to inform the budget process. 6 or so of those. I mean, that's a commitment there, but it's budget specific. So the idea to explore additional public town halls or public forums, the budget meetings have typically been the only opportunity for people to come and have that two-way conversation, but it may not necessarily be budget related. You know, it could be other community concerns. So if there's an opportunity to engage people so they don't have to wait until August, September when the budget meetings are around and then just kind of, it all come out. Have that conversation more frequently and potentially address those concerns, or conversations in a more timely manner where it doesn't just build up and then become part of an ineffective budget conversation. And where people are feeling like they're not getting what they wanted or getting hurt. So, we need to discuss, is that something the board wants to do? It can be, I've been involved in public engagement sessions in the past. In my previous role, that was one of my responsibilities as manager to facilitate and moderate those. There's different levels of public engagement. We would define, what is the objective? What are we looking for? Is it simply a forum, a two-way conversation, or are you actually asking for public input and consultation on a specific issue? Those are some of it's where you have a dedicated one for, say, a capital project or a direct initiative. But, that is something we could do. And if you do that, keeping in mind the other scheduled meetings, what would be the right frequency? Is it quarterly? Is it semi-annually, twice a year, to kind of mix in with the other already public meetings that are scheduled? You know your constituents in your districts best. So what do you think would feel? Is that something the board is willing to explore? And what would the right frequency be?
Well, I think one of the areas would be of concern that it'd be a timely topic because of their time involvement of an evening meeting. And we do have, in the West End, we do have 3 annual meetings with each township. So that's another venue for me to put out information.
Okay.
They come to those quite frequently because they don't come to town board meetings so much, but they will come to an annual meeting. That's when the townships set their budget and they discuss how they're going to have their money spent. But we've all been through meetings where it's in each district. We've brought a team. We had Brady, we had the assessor, and we might get 5 people. Now, that would be an important topic, property taxes and how all that works. But I think Bobby had 6 people or 3 people, and Heidi had 2 people. And so I don't know, when we have an important topic like that, that's what we get. So,
Yeah, that is a risk. I mean, you can put a lot of energy into hosting an additional public forum, and then you have, a handful of people that show up. But principally, if you do it consistently and communicate them, it is a kind of an education process. So it's new, you know, people would not be familiar with it. It takes time sometimes to involve people and have them feel comfortable. Another
It's-
piece of that is setting ground rules of how you're going to run those, and the civility project or additional cultivation of productive engagement has to go along with that. So if, you know, this is an opportunity, it's timely we've started looking at that, as well as hosting additional opportunities to set that precedent, you know, and as that becomes part of the culture of the meetings and becomes open and effective for both the board and citizens, perhaps more people would come.
Well, these are good topics. You know, County Road 45, you're going to get a large group of people who are concerned about that, and then the jail study.
Yep.
You know, that's going to be huge for people to know about. There again, maybe the email blast, letting people know that this is going to happen far enough ahead of time.
Similar to when we put any of the releases out, whenever there's, and we saw this with the Siegel Tower Public Information Session, whenever we have an opportunity like that, it is widely communicated. So through all of our own channels, self-publishing,
Right.
as well as for things like that, there's usually public notices and paid ads advertising those as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we have an additional, some sort of email subscription.
I'd be up for twice a year to see how it works and what the participation is, and then maybe after we do that for a year, the next meeting, we ask the public if they want them more frequently or if they're okay with twice a year. And my thought on twice a year instead of annual is that I have fluctuating residential levels.
Yep.
And one of the comments I hear when people call me that don't live here 12 months out of the year say, well, you probably don't care what I think because I'm not a year-round resident. And so
Which, yeah,
I want
which
them
is
to
not
feel
the case.
heard.
I think Pam had a,
I was going to say the radio, almost everybody in town listens to the radio at least once a day. So that's a really effective way of announcing these meetings.
Yeah.
And the other thing, if I may, I just want to say that these meetings have to occur far enough in advance of the final decision so that the public feels that what it's saying is being taken into consideration. One of the reasons that the Truth in Taxation meeting is so volatile is it's been left too late. You've already made up your minds pretty much what you're going to do. And these people come and they vent, but they don't feel that it's like my father used to say, it's like peeing in a blue serge suit. You get a warm feeling, but you've got nothing to show for it. So, I mean, it's like just, you know, like an exercise in futility. So the public needs to have a chance to input with the feeling that you're going to listen and factor it in, not just kind of, so.
And that's when we have the town hall meetings and we don't get a lot of participation.
Well, I think you have to announce that in terms of, if you want to see the changes, you have to show up for the meetings. You have to voice, you can't wait until the last minute after the policy has been set. And see if you don't get people showing up. This is a funny town, you know. People, they're hesitant to speak in some cases and not in others. And there's like a huge amount of whispering behind the hands that goes on in this town. And there's a lot of people that are very angry about the taxes, right? Very angry about the taxes. And
I'm going to add that to the issues list. Just, I mean, that's, if that's underlying and fueling the issue, we should acknowledge that and keep that in consideration when we're exploring options.
And that's probably the biggest frustration with our communication with the public and to the board is about taxes, wouldn't you say, in general, board? I mean, so if absolutely everything you're suggesting for the mechanisms are great, and electronic presence, everything is great, but if we can really hone in our public forum town halls on taxes, or there was a group that came and gave a presentation at Voyager about how property taxes are at the state level divided, I believe, between commercial, industrial, residential, and how that all affects each other. I wish I knew what group that was.
Jim Boyd does, I think.
Probably, yeah, Tracy Benson was touting it, but that'd be a good avenue just to get more people involved or educated in the process, and like Pam was saying earlier on, so that it's not the last minute.
Yeah.
Education is a huge part of that, because we get a lot of people in, and you look at the city's truth in taxation, the school board's truth in the hospital, those are all on many people's taxes, and there isn't people showing up in the same level they're showing up here. And so how do we help them understand all the mechanisms and the resources and how each of those lines affects them?
And we probably need to be careful with the word education too, because it can.
Education,
Ours too.
Oh, well, both,
I
but
watch new commissioners come in and they don't know.
I don't know.
See?
But what I meant though with careful with the word education is it can also almost be offensive to some people saying, "Oh, I need to get educated," you know, like.
Yes.
Look at my bill.
Like.
yeah, it's not education, it's communicating.
You're right,
your
yes.
Understanding.
messaging, not referring to anybody's education level, certainly not, but that is a good point.
Right, and when the form prints out one line off, and then you really have to try and figure out how it goes across.
The real challenge with communicating about taxes is it's not about taxes. Taxes are a calculation based on the program that is set at every other meeting that we have throughout the year. So when we see the Human Services Board meeting and they talk about the change in the staff and the change in the programs and the support from the state and the federal agencies, you all know that you're making decisions or decisions are being made that may have an impact on local property taxes later. So the challenge is to tie all of that information in together, all that context in together, because truthfully, when it gets to the point of going to Brady's office, it's a calculation. At the conversation level, at the policy level, that's what the board's responsibility is, and that's what we need to engage the public on, is the conversation about the policy response to the external world and the needs of our community. Because once you do that, I mean, everything else is just really a calculation.
And I don't think that commissioners just know that, because when we had changes in public health and it was approved to add staff, as a pain in the butt as I am, I would say, you understand the approving of this affects the budget, and then the budget would come, and then we would have commissioners upset about how high it is, and it's like, you voted to approve that addition to our budget. So I don't think that we just automatically put that together and how that affects the final number. So how can we expect the public to understand it?
So those are the questions that I think we as staff can help you understand the context and communicate and develop messages around that. And you know, in the first years I was here working on the budget, I think we understood that the issue was either we have to adjust revenues or we have to adjust program. And the support for the board was to adjust revenues because they intentionally added the staff to provide the services that were necessary in 2014 and 2015, and then we got to 16 and we had a revenue shortfall. And we continued in 17 until we addressed it. So if you go back and take a look at the numbers, and I don't mean to reduce it to calculation, but the numbers and the budget comes from policy level decisions, and the more the better conversations are at the policy level. Because just
informing
Yep.
those decisions. And when you say, Pam, was meaningful consultation, not an empty gesture, just an exercise where there's no time to actually have any input. So to Jeff's point, maybe timing these meetings or the additional public meetings at an earlier point where that conversation can actually have an impact, deep input into those decisions.
And I think that has to be pounded home that you have to come in at the very beginning and not just, like Heidi says, pass something in one area, it looks good, and then when it comes up in the budget, go, oh my God, you know what I mean? It's got, the public has to understand that their input is important from the beginning. So that's what you have to convey. So it doesn't just turn into numbers which have no refutation.
And all that has to happen outside of truth and taxation, because truth and taxation is scheduled to happen within a set period. We have no choice about,
Too late, but
it's, and truth and taxation is not the time to affect change. That's absolutely true.
Maybe we should have a meeting called Proof and Taxation, just to
Proof.
get people,
I got a question.
that'd be confusing.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, if I could comment, it's only a thought, and I don't know where it'll go, but I know that in some organizations, you do strategic planning or you seek input. And with government, I know we have certain responsibilities that we have to meet by law, statute, and by service, and we have restrictions on how to do that, but I think that sometimes people, and rightfully so, they don't want to pay the taxes they're paying, and that's their belief. But then we have to look at, well, what do we need to do? And what service, I think, as Jeff mentioned. So my question is there some way that we could construct some kind of survey that we were talking about earlier to say, you know, and they would have to be professionally done and maybe done someplace else, and I know in the past I've been involved in some, to say, you know, what does the public want from us?
If we opted to do a citizen satisfaction survey or citizen input, you know, we could define what the objectives are and what information we're soliciting. So certainly, you know, what priorities are.
Because we have to listen to everyone, and sometimes people come in to talk to us, want to convince us to lower it, but we also have to listen to other people, you know, and so we can't make everyone happy. We just
And
can't.
that's why, you know, that supporting data does support that, so it's not relying on a handful of people who are really comfortable being really vocal, but it's statistically gathering the input of the whole.
In a process like that is much more useful if it's part of a strategy, if it's done every second year, if it's done every third year, if it's done consistently and measured. Defining the objectives of such a study is the most important thing that the board could do if we decide to do that. Not managing, then you trust one of these organizations to put together a survey that will give you information related to your objectives. What do we want to know? I did one a long time ago. It was another issue. We were surveying customers related to their satisfaction with the food service we were operating. And we asked people, how many of you consider yourself vegetarian? And a third of them said we consider ourselves vegetarian. And we asked that third of the people, what's your favorite menu option that we have available? And they said chicken strips, right? So the truth of the matter is, people don't always know. That's why it's really important to work with people who work with this data all the time to really help to understand what really is important to people, because everybody values good roads and everybody values low property taxes. And at some point, there's a compromise between those things. And identifying objectives and having a strategy and sticking with it over a period of time will give better measurable and followable results. So if that's something that I think that what we would do is we figure out what it would take and what it would cost and include that as one of the items that we could do. But the other, just the local responsiveness and communication and creating an opportunity for citizens to engage and for us to respond to their questions, I think that's really just something we have to do and we have to develop the capacity for. And I think the communications group is already trying to figure out how we're going to arrange that so it reads better and supports your work in the public.
On the other side of information and getting things out early, like Rena does quarterly updates for us, but most of our staff know well in advance what changes are going to happen in their office and staffing. And so it's frustrating for me, and I can only imagine it's frustrating for the public when we get the whole budget book and it says add 100,000 to this department because they need this staff. And then we just cut it out because we just need to lower the budget, but we have no understanding of it. So Rena told us in advance Kevin was retiring, and so we were well prepared and knew what overlaps would happen. So if other departments in February or March know that coming to their budget for 2020, they're going to have staff changes, if they just did a presentation for us of their strategic plan or where they are in their department and why this is happening, so we in the public don't get that budget book and just assume this is they're going to ask for everything and see what gets taken off, that there's an actual reason for it.
Understanding the work of the departments and then
Yeah. Their ask.
I'm sorry, understanding why they're asking for it and the priorities.
Yeah, you had an ask that was a valid ask that was removed because we don't know the capacity of everything that you are required. I mean, we're getting a taste of it right now.
Yeah, I mean, and there's different
All-
factors of why that was.
All of those changes happen on a sliding scale. Allison has been talking to you for several months about whether or not we need another case aid person to work with a certain program and whether it's going to be sustainable or whether there's going to be funds available for that. I think that I think the large departments do a really good job of thinking ahead and thinking about their needs further down the line. And to the point of Rena kind of driving and setting the standard for coming to the board and providing department updates, you heard an annual report from Health and Human Services. Later this year, you're going to hear an annual report from the Highway Department. We've already got a lot of that reporting built into the process, and those reports talk about changes or anticipated needs or additional resources that would, if we want to do this much, we need this many resources. If we have this many resources, we can get this much. And I think there would be value in probably including more of those staff reports at our regular board meetings, the way that Rena and Rowan have started to develop the capacity for that. They've developed capacity for that because they're project people. That's their skill set. That's how they organize their stuff. So if we want that kind of reporting from the rest of our staff, then we have to work to help them develop those skills. The agenda system will allow us to project those things and plan those things, coordinate our schedules throughout the year. There are public input options when that rolls out publicly that people can subscribe so they know that there's a change to an agenda, that they know that a new agenda is out. So we're really going to significantly change our capacity to provide information and respond to questions from the public just from the things that are already in the hopper this year.
Great.
But there's also the need to develop a strategy so that we are doing it consistently and have the ability to measure results as we go forward with it.
Awesome.
Well, I hope we can do that. You know, the hardest thing is to sit here and have the presentation of, I need this money in my department, without ever having a chance for us to look into it, to ask questions before it comes to us.
To make time.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Right.
that's the intent of committee of the whole as well, as a working session. We're working through, you work through the issues there and through the standing committees. And when that works well, it's a multiple vetted process, but yeah, it's hard to make a decision when you don't have any of the legwork or time to review
Right.
or the information to base that decision on.
Right.
Yeah, in some departments, we get to see you and interact with you regularly. I mean, you're probably sick of getting things from me and updates and all kinds of information all the time, and I'm regularly at work. But yeah, other departments have not been in to make those presentations, and yeah, unfortunately.
And it depends how you process. I mean, I see everything you're doing, and my brain says, how in the hell does Valerie do all of this?
Valerie and I have reviewed that. She's got 4 main components to her job, and each one of them occupy 50% of her time.
See?
Yeah, and.
Yeah, and that's before a crisis happens.
Yeah, that's not an emergency situation. And unfortunately, I had to voluntarily pull that request for additional resources because we don't have the capacity to put another person. And there's not the opportunity to increase that. So, you know,
Yeah.
I think we're cognizant of the climate as well. And it's like we can't increase that capacity without.
But
the
I felt it
resources
was
without
justified.
place. Well, yeah, it is, and I agree too. And then there's a number of positions that are likely like that.
In response to that, that's why we need to engage the communications committee so that we can prioritize and sort through and distribute the workload to a degree, and then prioritize. Like, we could come up with 100 different ideas, but if we come up with 2 good ones out of this process and implement them successfully, it's better than picking 10 and hit or miss.
Trying to do everything at once.
So to develop consistency is going to be much better for you and for the public, and then for us administratively, if the system is consistent.
Yeah. You know, and just working with the communications committee and our MAT team and the commissioners, there is a passion for public service and a commitment to deliver quality service and quality information and connect with the community. Everybody wants to do very well and are committed and dedicated to this community. So, I mean, I have an opportunity to see that, and it's great to bring the board into that and have this community conversation, because our staff are trying to do more and more all the time with less, and are dedicated to that, and none of us want to overpromise and underdeliver. So, to Jeff's point, I think we have an opportunity to pick a few really good wins here and start implementing them.
I think the county, we kind of know what's coming in quarters. You know, we got public health and stuff, all their reviews this quarter. The next quarter, we're going to have highway project openings, so on and so forth. Then we go into tax season, and, you know, it's kind of the same thing every year. And I think I've been thinking of the report or the thing in the newspaper, that's after the fact. You know, I would suggest at the end of that, you put, you know, up and coming.
Yeah.
It's good.
You know, then people see it and say, you know, like, geez, next month, this is coming up, and they kind of forewarns them.
Yeah, the intent of the County Connect column, we need to decide on a name there, but the intent of the column is not to report on what's happened. That's the media's job, is reporting supposedly factually on news that has happened, but the intent with the column is to proactively communicate things that are coming up and delivering information on services or programs or decisions that are coming up to engage the public beforehand. So
And additional context.
Yeah, that is the intent. So that it's not reporting historically, but delivery of information.
Even, and yes, it's an annual cycle, and we have seasons, and we have response, and we have work time, and we have snow time, but in the middle of it, when you're just busy with what's in front of you that day, sometimes people forget that it's an annual cycle. And so it's a good reminder. And a communications plan or a calendar identifies those timely seasonal, you know, when it comes to be September, we start thinking, okay, let's get some messages about snow plowing and winter driving, and I think we've tightened that cycle up. Some of it's responsive. Sometimes the snow comes before you think it's gonna. But we're developing regular content that relates to the regular business that comes up annually, and I think that's good. You know, we've held equalization town hall meetings for the last 2 or 3 years, and the budget meetings for at least the last 2 years, and we've been adding to our communications, our ability, and to engage with the public, and I think that's good and important. And what's next? What strategically do we add that can have the most impact? So that if there's thoughts, we would take your comments. I think we'll summarize and send this information out, so I don't know that we're probably not going to put anything together for Tuesday. It'll probably be the first meeting in March. Or, I'm sorry, February. Just skipped right over February. Or do you think we can have something together? If the two things are to create the ability to take in and respond to public comment, and the implementation of a weekly county column in the newspaper, and maybe the thought of adding 2 additional just open discussion forum town halls, we could present what that would look like on a calendar with the rest of the stuff that we know is happening for you to review even as early as next week. If it was those pieces, because I think those pieces are well enough developed.
Yeah, I think it can be summarized and brought back within that time.
That means by the end of the day tomorrow, of course, to get it into the agenda, but.
Well, I was curious, especially Bobby, if you thought, with your concerns about having the committee of the whole during the day instead of the evening, if you felt like 2 additional public forum town halls would be an adequate number. I mean, I would say no, except for we have the other public meetings, but those are going to be topic specific versus,
The committee of the whole should have been topic specific too.
Right. Sure. Yes.
I don't think it would be a bad idea to go out to West End with one, up the trail with one, Hoagland with one, kind of move it around and.
For public input and response. Okay. Well,
Kind of bring county government to them.
we could take our meeting there. No.
I do think it's important, though, just from historical experience, that the whole board, or, whomever possibly can, participate at the same time, because what we want to avoid is having different messaging in different parts. Like if I don't think you're suggesting taking turns posting them in different places, but
Bring the whole-
moving them around so that it's
Bringing the whole board.
getting out to various parts of the county. But it is important that, everybody has access to the same experience, so it's not, one experience on this end and one experience on the other. So just wanted to clarify that.
And I think we can do that with some of these, because County Road 45 would make sense to do that in Ginny's district.
Yeah, I was just wondering about, or tossing this out here. If the forums are not that well attended, I think they should be, or you should give some thought to having the radio involved and have call-in questions, because some people have worked very hard all day, they're interested in the topic, they're just too damn tired to get to the city hall, or they couldn't get a babysitter that night, but they have something that they'd like to contribute. So they should be allowed to maybe call in. Or if they have to stay at home, they are in that process somehow. They can either listen to what's being said, or they can call in, or get involved somehow. I mean, I don't mind coming to the meetings, but a lot of people are just exhausted, can't get there. Still interested though. So.
I don't know if this is an option here, but in the past I have facilitated some meetings where we have a live Twitter feed, and there's a big screen where it's like people can tweet in their question, and the moderator has access to that and reads the question and delivers the answer. The answer is tweeted back. That's one accessible means, or incorporating WTIP if it's a phone in. So there are technological options depending on where and how we do it, but
That's
And
an
we've been
excellent
part of-
suggestion, because you have to remember that there are parts of the county
Yeah.
that are not computer literate, or,
yeah.
they're more traditional people.
And we've done first Thursday call-ins on WTIP when there's a specific topic, like updating our septic ordinance or our comp plan. We have been on the radio.
What happened to those, the first Thursday call-ins?
WTIP schedules those.
Yeah,
Okay.
but they've contacted us, when we have an ordinance to update, they've contacted us and said, are you willing to be on? And we've done that.
So it wasn't maybe as regular It was just.
Nope, it was per
initiative
subject.
Specific?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, maybe if you know those are coming up, you should give Joe Frederickson heads up. And
He has his head up and he calls us.
He's
He knows.
listening now.
Hi, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, we're in regular contact with, and that's part of the media distribution process too, that we provide all of that info, but, yeah, maybe having the discussion with them, if that's a possibility, to do that more regularly. We can certainly explore that.
One of the things that also struck me at the town hall meeting, the budget town hall meeting, I thought it was extremely productive and beneficial, but having Brady there and Todd, I think, was key, because they're, we try to represent, but they know, a lot more facts and details, and so,
Subject matter experts.
yeah, that's very important and maybe more difficult,
Yeah.
bringing Brady to a evening meeting, but maybe not. I don't know.
He likes to get out at night.
It's not that hard.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I do think holding it in different locations does make it more sometimes welcoming. Sometimes the formality of this setting isn't as attractive to people, for some people to attend, but if we do move it around the county and people want to, go visit different facilities, sometimes that can be more welcoming. So, just to reiterate what I'm hearing about public meetings, is there support in my summary, support to explore having 2 per year just as a test? And that would need to be scheduled accordingly with the other, or not accordingly, but in consideration of the schedule of the other public meetings.
I would be most comfortable with getting one going sooner rather than later and seeing how that attendance is. And then if we do need different ones in different parts of the county, then maybe we'll need more than 2. And to Pam's point too, sooner. But I mean, I guess we're nowhere in the budget process at this point, so maybe that wouldn't get much traction anyways, but.
But we were talking about the jail and stuff.
True, there will be other
And
ones,
that one
yeah.
will be happening
Yeah.
hopefully in the very near future. We started discussing before the holidays and are exploring potential dates right now. We very much want to get out and connect with the public and have that conversation.
But
So within the near future, hold the first one.
please.
Look at what we do.
Please, and I mean, the reason I'm saying that is because it feels to me like 2 is not enough, but that might be a smart way to start.
So try one in early Q1. Okay, yeah, and, they're not intended to be, well, everything we do obviously impacts the budget, but it's not intended to be a budget conversation, but a public forum on general concerns and priorities and citizen input. Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll put that in. Awesome. Where are we on our agenda? So, cultivating productive public engagement. There is a connection to Speaker Peace Disability Project. We did have the initial workshop before the holidays, and then that got tabled for more research, more input. That's going to be coming back at some point, so I'm not entirely sure of how the plan to.
I'll probably summarize where we're at and send an email directly to the commissioners and ask for some consent about putting it on a future agenda.
To review
Yep.
what's happened since, and whether it's Speak Your Piece principles or exploring another set of ground rules. We want, obviously, the public engagement, whatever form that is, to be productive for everybody, for the board, for the public to feel comfortable in engaging in the county government process and with its elected officials. And it's a commitment from the county as well as commitment from the public. So, and this is an opportunity for us to lead by example.
You mentioned 2 components, and is this typically expectations with staff as well? if we went this route, that it would be staff, commissioners, public engagement issues.
Administration, as well as the county board, us as a county overall, adopting the principles for ground rules for any of our meetings and our processes.
Or engagement between staff and public or other organizations. Yeah, that's the question. Can we do that, or?
Yeah.
I can answer specifically by talking about our transportation planning process with ARDC. I shared with them that we were looking at and thinking about the Speak Your Piece project, and they said, that'd be great, we're familiar with that. We'd be happy to use that in the facilitation of the public input sessions that ARDC is going to do related to our transportation plan. Our partners are already very familiar with that program, or setting the tone for a productive public engagement. So they would be on board with helping that. There are people in the community, the Cook County Community Fund, some other organizations who are saying, how can we help with that? So they're really looking at just facilitating good public engagement, whatever that is. If this is a tool we decide to use, or we just adopt other sets of rules, something to say that we want everybody's opinion is valid, and we want to bring as many of them to the table as we can.
Yeah, in a respectful way. I mean, there's a good existing tried and true program, or we can explore other of those.
Like-
And even having the mission statement and the values up here at the beginning of the meeting, I think when you review those and you go, oh yeah, respect, integrity, when you review those at the start of an activity, I think everybody kind of is like, okay, yeah, you can embrace that and have that kind of set the tone for meetings. I think that's helpful for everybody.
Again, my question, that would be an expectation for staff when they interact with others as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe that that we'd be adopting for anybody that's representing the county, whether it's staff, administration.
So they had offered to
Or
come
public.
back up and work with us in collaboration with the community. Could that be our Q1 town hall meeting?
It could be a part of it. That's one of the questions I wanted to ask in having a conversation about town hall meetings. Do we need to have brief presentations that are timely? Like maybe what you had said about some departments doing more summary updates or more presentations. Is that the venue to do updates from some of the departments where there may not necessarily be a decision on the table right at that time, but to give more of a summary of the work and potential things that coming up, and then opening up for open forum?
I was hoping they'd come to committee of the whole, so we can hash it out as a group. And then maybe we take it to a town hall.
We'd have to bring them to all town halls, then. That's what you're saying, right? Not
Said
just
maybe.
one. Because I think we'd have to be consistent with
And then if
all
we're
of
doing
it.
our COW in conjunction with the departmental update presentations, because if there is not,
There's not a
decision and
huge-
it's
yeah.
more information, that this would likely be the better.
Right,
venue
it doesn't
for
need to go to a town hall.
But to the other question, would that be part of the town, should we make Speak Your Piece part of the town hall, like the first town hall? I don't know, that's up to this group.
So I have a question about the semantics of Speak Your Piece. Is it necessary to pass a resolution, or can we adopt it or support it?
I'm not the expert on that process, so I think we'd need to.
You can do anything that you want to do. Truthfully, at some point, we're not entirely sure there isn't a resolution that said the county board adopted this at some point in the past.
I believe we have.
That being said, is there a commitment on behalf of this board to facilitate good, constructive public engagement? And I know the answer is yes, but what's the strategy? What's the most effective strategy for us? And whether we, by resolution, adopt this, or by practice, write this into the rules of our meetings, it really doesn't, whether whether it has this name on it, or whether it just simply, we take some other set of rules and say, this is how we'd like to conduct our session. To that extent, we have a summary of rules that you have in your desk drawer that talk about public comment. So this is a self-governing board. You get to, I'm sorry, the chair has those rules in her desk drawer.
That's checking.
Wrong desk.
So it's completely up to this board.
Okay.
Well, I think if you look at the mission statement, it's already there.
Adopting a specific set of values or principles specifically for meetings and how we interact holds people accountable to them. It will match up with the vision, but whenever you enter the room and everybody then agrees to that, and that gives you the basis, the ground rules to go by. So if things go sideways or somebody's behavior is not lining up with that, it gives you a baseline to go back to. The mission is a little bit more broad, right? What does that actually mean for what's happening in a room at that specific time? Those principles as ground rules for a meeting or an engagement session would give you that tool.
And adopting would be nice because I sit on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and how we conduct that meeting is a little different from this. So when the public comes to this meeting, and it's different when you go to that meeting, but we're both governing bodies, it'd be nice to have that set of guidelines so that the public, when they come to any one of our presentations, has the same expectation.
Mm-hmm. And part of the implementation process, if that's adopted, then that's going to need to be part of the implementation process as a self-education for everybody. And it needs to be properly built into the start of the meeting or in the agenda as a reference for some time until it just becomes part of our
Habit.
culture.
Yep.
Isn't that infringing on someone's constitutional right to freedom of speech?
How?
If you don't like what they're saying, then you can shut them down?
I don't think that was part of.
It's the manner in which they say it.
Yeah. But
And I think
I
that's
might
a
take
dis-
it different than someone else.
But I think that's a discussion why we would have them back to help us understand that, because I
To
don't,
understand the difference.
I don't
between
see this as preventing someone from speaking.
abusive behavior versus accepting somebody else's opinion, how it's, just the same as we wouldn't want to be inappropriate or abusive to whoever that's come to speak to us. They should not be, delivering that to the board either. I mean, it's an agreed upon set of ground rules. That doesn't mean that you can't express your opinion or are entitled to your own opinion, but it is, there's a way of delivering it without being vulgar or abusive or abrasive or name-calling individuals or, Right.
One of the things that I know I've learned, and it's a good policy, is that, many times if someone's delivery is to bully you or to, be disrespectful, I guess, I don't get the message. I get the delivery. And so when someone tries to bully me or something like that, or insult me in public, I don't hear what they're saying. I just react to the delivery. And so it's not fair to say anything goes, because it just breaks down communications. And this is for the benefit of everyone to be heard and communicate. And sometimes behaviors get in the way. That's why we have laws. You don't shoot someone when you disagree with them,
Are we going to have like a moderator for these things, or is that where the committee of the whole, maybe staff comes in or something?
For public engagement sessions or town hall meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they should be. I mean, it shouldn't be, we need to allow for open conversation and an open forum, but it should be moderated or facilitated so that everybody gets the chance to speak, and then it's not just, chaotic.
Speaking to what you were saying, the moderator, instead instead of you reacting to the delivery, the moderator at that point can say, do I understand you to be volatile person, to be saying that you really don't feel that that road needs that much attention or whatever.
Yeah.
He then diffuses it, rephrases it. He feels heard. You understand what was being asked. And-
Yeah, that's the role of a facilitator.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it makes for a lot of times more effective communication. I think that was your point, Commissioner Bertrand. If somebody is feeling like they have been heard, and then the people who are responsible for answering or engaging also understand, that can be very helpful.
The committee of the whole, I've moderated that, and it seems like the meetings that we've had, public conversation for maybe 15 or 20 minutes has been pretty mild. What we react to are the meetings where we listen, but we can't speak in regard to what their concern is. So I think that's what you're referring to more, where we can't repeat back what they want to know. So it's good to have a moderator, yes.
Yeah, for those committee of the whole sessions are just this, working sessions for the board.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the board function and with admin and staff. But for the larger public forum, yeah, I think that's how I've seen them be successful and have been in that role.
Yeah.
So I did make a note of, do not limit free speech, because we want to keep that as a priority. Welcoming people's opinion, even if it's not our own, but how we do that together. So there's going to be more discussion about how and when we go back, revisit the
Yeah, I think
feasibility project.
I think we can work together and summarize and share it with the commissioners before we bring it back for them to take a look at. And all components of today's conversation.
That's all I had as part of the public engagement discussion on the agenda, but if there's anything else you feel like we've missed, anything you want included, or just want to say, if you have other ideas.
This is how board meetings used to be. Public used to be able to come and be included in the conversation. And I know a lot of you weren't here for that, so I just want you to know there was nothing violent or angry or obstructive about this at all. It was just us all doing the work together.
Citizens part of the conversation.
This is what I miss.
They used to be 8 hours long, too.
That was a whole other ball of wax. We
Okay.
didn't have the consent agenda. It wasn't the public participating. It was because we approved the budget and said highway department gets to buy this, and then the highway department would come back and argue with us for 3 hours about whether or not they're still allowed to buy it when we budgeted it.
And I really think in a smaller community, we can do that kind of thing. I think it's important to have policy, though. I mean, what if things do get out of hand? What if it does become unproductive, So that's
And
kind of,
that's why you adopt the
right,
civility.
right. Well, sure. And I think I already said this, but I'll just re-emphasize it, that I do appreciate all the electronic means of communication as well as the radio. I think that's a very powerful tool, but just that face-to-face, I think, is really what's going to engage and build public trust again.
Okay.
And yes, please.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, no,
Finish.
I was
Yeah.
going to ramble.
I think I'd propose that we have further discussion, because, so how would we conduct a board meeting? In other words, every agenda item would have discussion from the public, and we would have discussion,
No.
and then, what are you saying? I mean,
Well, I
how
wasn't
are we-
saying, I was trying not to say that.
Oh, so what, please clarify, because
Right
she said the
now.
good old days where you just talk about it and talk, and
Yes.
we don't have any structure, except we have agenda items, and then we talk, and we interact with the public.
Break.
And then we have a county attorney saying, well, you got to conduct business too.
Right, right.
So I'm just wondering, what kind of format can we have to try to, sometimes you just can't do everything, but to move in a better direction. And I'm not opposed to having more, maybe having dialogue as part of the beginning of the meeting for part of it. But
I know that's.
I think I like to have structure, just because I've seen it when it doesn't happen, you end up someplace you don't want to be.
Did
And
you
it's
feel
really
like
hard
this
to-
meeting was structured?
Well, this is the committee of the whole.
Right, but did you feel like it was structured?
Yeah, we had an agenda.
Okay.
I think there's an opportunity for, at least for two of our commissioners that are going to a training session next week, and for the rest of the commissioners to test some of these ideas and hypotheses with your peers in other counties. Best practices are established, and opportunities for public engagement are included in county government, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and we can do whatever the board decides that they want to do. But understand every level, every policy has a cost.
If I could just comment one more time, too, we are elected officials, and we should be working with our constituents. And I've seen it at some meetings way in the past where it was the same 5, 6 people coming, interacting with the board or wherever it was, and then who is representing the people by the elected process. So somehow or the other, I think we need to distinguish, but not to preclude that dialogue. But to enter it into a structure of a county board meeting, I would, before I could support anything like that, I'd like to really lay that up, based upon some kind of previous
Your
best
county attorney
practices.
has strong feelings about that as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're proposing any changes to the structure of board meetings right now, but exploring
Good. Well,
But
wanted to
additional-
clarify that.
things like the comment cards or just the registration process and the commitment to follow up as small improvements, but not changing the structure.
And I'm sorry to
The
have,
formal business meeting.
I'm sorry to have confused that. It was my face-to-face comment was separate from Heidi's comment, and just that I really think the town halls are going to be a very powerful
Thank you.
tool, so, yeah, I meant.
I agree.
Yeah, I meant to break that Heidi's thought away from
I
Heidi.
was asking a question, not accusing. But I was getting confused with the dialogue on how we do board meetings, and I think we need to.
Well, it's important to clarify the difference too. But I do think that, Dave, your point is consistent with what we identified in the issues process and what we're hearing from the community, that there's that face-to-face and human interaction component and feedback is what's missing. So if we can find a way to build some of those in, it will round out the rest of the process. Is that accurate?
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Any other thoughts from?
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you,
It's very
Valerie.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam, for
Thank you for coming.
showing up.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Are you going back to the office?
Are you going to close the meeting?
I'm going to close the
Do we
meeting.
need a motion?
I don't, yeah.
I
Okay.
move, we close the meeting.
We close the meeting, move. Myron did it.
Yes, I'm going back to the office.
Okay.
I think I've had some
We always have.
since noon.
Okay.